Welcome back to our channel. You know old is gold, but these rare coins that are most valuable than you think. Don't spend these coins if you have these coins. Please watch complete video. Let's start this. What if I told you that one ordinary looking 1978 Lincoln penny, specifically a Denver mint, has been associated with a market value reported as high as $913,000? Let me ask you something before we go any further. When was the last time you actually looked at the pennies sitting in your drawer? Not glanced at them. Looked at them. Because the difference between spare change and a life-changing asset is knowledge, and today, that knowledge could be worth a fortune. This story begins in America in 1978. Gas was cheap, bell-bottoms were fading, and most people were too busy living life to imagine that the pennies passing through their hands might one day become rare artifacts of wealth. The U.S. Mint in Denver struck millions of Lincoln cents that year, and they were meant to be ordinary, predictable, uniform. But history has a funny way of rewarding imperfections. Somewhere in that massive production run, a small number of coins slipped through that weren't quite right. And in the world of elite coin collectors, not quite right can mean everything. Now here's where your heart rate should go up just a little. Because coin errors aren't mistakes. They're anomalies. They're the mint's fingerprints. They're proof that something unrepeatable happened for a fraction of a second, never to occur again in quite the same way. Certain 1978 Lincoln pennies have been linked to extraordinary error characteristics that serious collectors aggressively compete for. We're talking about errors so rare, so visually striking, that they elevate a 1-cent coin into a 6-figure, and reportedly even 7-figure, conversation. And yes, coins tied to valuations approaching $913,000 have turned heads in high-end numismatic circles. Here's a quick pattern interrupt for you. Imagine telling someone at a dinner party, "My most valuable asset isn't my house or my retirement account. It's a penny." They'd laugh. Right up until they didn't. Because the people who win in rare coins aren't gamblers, they're early recognizers. They're the ones who understand that scarcity plus demand equals power. And demand for elite era pennies has never been higher than it is right now. This brings us into the heart of the story, the moment of realization. The moment when collectors, investors, and everyday Americans began waking up to the fact that Lincoln cents aren't just nostalgic keepsakes. They are historical instruments of wealth. The 1978 penny sits at a fascinating crossroads. Modern enough to still be hiding in collections, jars, and inherited boxes, yet old enough to be firmly on the radar of serious buyers who have money ready to deploy. When high net worth collectors compete, prices don't inch upward. They surge. And here's the part most people don't like to hear, but need to. The biggest risk isn't that your penny isn't valuable. The biggest risk is that you never check. Fear has a funny way of disguising itself as procrastination. I'll look later. It's probably nothing. I don't want to get my hopes up. Meanwhile, rare coins quietly change hands every year for amounts that rewrite family histories. The market doesn't wait. Opportunity doesn't send reminders. And the coins that command top dollar are moving faster than ever as awareness spreads. Let's reset for a second with a simple question. What would change in your life if a single coin funded your freedom? Not fantasy, strategy. Paying off a home, funding a dream retirement, creating generational security. This is why the 1978 Lincoln penny has become such a powerful symbol. It represents the idea that wealth doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it sits quietly, waiting for the right person to recognize it. As we move into the final act, the urgency becomes real. The current rare coin market is driven by demand, visibility, and timing. As more people learn what to look for, fewer undiscovered coins remain. That's not opinion, it's economics. High-grade, high-interest era coins are being absorbed into private collections, vaults, and investment portfolios. Once that happens, supply tightens. And when supply tightens in a market fueled by passion and prestige, values don't stay flat. They accelerate. This is where you step into the story, not as a spectator, but as a decision maker. If you own old pennies, especially from the late 1970s, you are holding a potential question mark that deserves an answer. Not hype. Not guesswork. Professional evaluation. Because the people who live wealthy lifestyles aren't lucky, they're deliberate. They understand that every overlooked asset is an opportunity waiting to be claimed. So here's the final thought I'll leave you with. History rewards the curious, the bold, the people willing to look twice at what others dismiss. Somewhere in America right now, a 1978 Lincoln penny is sitting quietly, unaware of its own significance. The only question is whether it's sitting in your possession, and whether you'll recognize its value before someone else does. Because in the world of rare coins, awareness isn't just power, it's profit. The penny in your pocket might be worth more than your house. And no, that's not clickbait. Right now, somewhere in America, a single 1968 Lincoln 1-cent coin, a coin most people would flick into a jar without a second thought, has reached a market value approaching $998,000. Almost $1 million. Let that sink in. Because the most dangerous mistake you can make today is assuming that the coins you already own are ordinary. History has proven, again and again, that the greatest fortunes often hide in plain sight, and they usually look small. In 1968, America was changing fast. The country was tense, the economy uncertain, and the U.S. Mint was quietly producing coins that would one day shock the collecting world. At the San Francisco Mint, something extraordinary happened. A small number of Lincoln pennies left the presses with rare and powerful errors, mistakes so subtle that they went unnoticed for decades. These were not damaged coins. These were mint anomalies, frozen moments where history, metal, and chance collided. And today, elite collectors are fighting to own them. Here's the uncomfortable truth most people don't want to hear. While millions of Americans search for side hustles, gamble on trends, or wait for retirement that never feels secure, some people quietly cash in on what they already own. Old pennies. Forgotten rolls. Coins passed down from parents and grandparents. And the fear you should feel right now isn't missing out, it's realizing you might already have what others are desperately trying to buy. Quick question: when was the last time you actually looked at your pennies instead of dumping them into a jar? The 1968 Lincoln penny is especially powerful because of its errors. Double dies. Off-center strikes. Misaligned mint marks. Transitional metal anomalies. These errors turn an everyday coin into a six-figure to near seven-figure asset when preserved in elite condition. And unlike stocks or crypto, these coins aren't being created anymore. The supply is permanently capped. Demand, on the other hand, keeps rising as wealthy collectors compete for fewer and fewer top-grade examples. That imbalance is exactly how million-dollar markets are born. Now let's pause for a second. Imagine explaining to someone that a penny paid for your retirement. Sounds ridiculous, right? That's exactly what people said about rare coins 20 years ago. And those same people are now watching auction headlines in disbelief. Humor me for a moment. If someone offered you a scratch-off ticket with a realistic chance at life-changing money, would you throw it away without looking? Because that's exactly what happens every day when rare pennies are ignored. This brings us to the turning point. The moment when curiosity becomes action. Because knowledge alone doesn't create wealth, decisions do. Right now, certified 1968 era pennies are in extreme demand. Professional grading services, auction houses, and private collectors are actively sourcing them. Not next year. Not someday. Now. And when a coin approaches the $1 million mark, the market doesn't slow down, it accelerates. Prices rise faster as fewer owners are willing to sell. Here's what separates the wealthy collector from everyone else. They don't wait until the story is over. They move while the opportunity is still uncomfortable, still underestimated, still ignored by the masses. The urgency isn't hype, it's mathematics. Fewer coins. More buyers. Higher prices. And once a coin is locked into a private collection, it often disappears from the market for decades. Miss it once, and it may never come back. So ask yourself this: what if the penny you inherited, the roll sitting in a drawer, or the coin you nearly spent last year is part of this story? What if your financial turning point doesn't require more work, more stress, or more risk, but simply awareness? Wealth doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it whispers, from the bottom of a coin jar. This is the final act, and it's the most important one. The people who win in markets like this aren't lucky. They're informed, decisive, and confident enough to act when others hesitate. The 1968 Lincoln penny is no longer a secret. It's a high-demand, high-value asset, and the window to discover one before prices move even higher is narrowing. Opportunity doesn't announce itself twice. If you want a wealthy lifestyle, you don't ignore value, you recognize it early. And sometimes, that value weighs exactly 1 gram and says, "In God we trust." Look at your pennies. Because the next one you touch could change everything. What if I told you that one small copper coin, quietly sitting in a drawer, a jar, or an old coffee can, has the power to rewrite a family's financial future? I'm talking about the 1973 D Mint Mark Lincoln 1-cent coin. Yes, a penny. The kind we once tossed into couch cushions without a second thought. And here's the uncomfortable question that should make you lean in right now: what if you already owned one, and never knew what to look for? History has a funny way of hiding wealth in plain sight, and nowhere is that truer than in American coinage. In the early 1970s, the U.S. Mint was under pressure, production was rushed, and perfection took a back seat to speed. That's when mistakes slipped through, mistakes collectors now chase with serious money. Real money. Life-changing money. Some documented examples of rare 1973 D Lincoln cent errors have been associated with valuations approaching the high 6 figures and, in elite cases discussed among top collectors, numbers that flirt with the extraordinary. Think about that for a moment. A single cent connected to values nearing $978,000 in today's market conversations. Suddenly, that old jar of pennies doesn't feel so ordinary, does it? And before you dismiss this as another internet fairy tale, ask yourself this: why are professional buyers, auction houses, and private collectors aggressively hunting these coins right now? Spoiler alert, it's not nostalgia. The 1973 D Lincoln penny sits at a fascinating crossroads in U.S. minting history. Struck in Denver during a period of intense demand, these coins were produced in massive quantities, but only a microscopic fraction left the mint with dramatic, high-value errors. We're talking about errors that don't whisper, we're talking about errors that shout. Doubling that jumps out at you. Misalignments that feel almost impossible. Metal flow anomalies that seasoned collectors describe as once in a lifetime. And here's where the fear kicks in, because it should. Most people who owned these coins spent them. They vanished into vending machines, gas stations, and grocery store registers. Gone forever. Which means the few that survived? They're in extreme demand. That scarcity is gasoline on the fire. The market doesn't politely ask for rare coins, it competes for them. And competition drives prices up fast. Now let me interrupt you for just a second with a reality check wrapped in humor. How many times have you said, "It's just a penny," and flicked one away? Yeah, turns out that sentence may be the most expensive phrase in American history. Today's serious buyers aren't laughing. They're quietly writing checks. And here's the exciting part: many of these coins were never identified at the time. They were saved randomly, inherited unknowingly, or forgotten entirely. Which means the hunt isn't over. Not even close. The fear isn't that these coins don't exist anymore. The fear is that someone else recognizes theirs before you recognize yours. Right now, a generational shift is happening in the collectibles market. Older collectors are consolidating. Wealthy buyers are moving tangible assets out of volatile spaces and into historically proven stores of value. Rare U.S. coins, especially dramatic era pennies, are at the center of that movement. The 1973 D Lincoln cent has become a magnet because it checks every box: age, story, rarity, and visual impact. And here's the urgency most people miss. Once a coin like this is authenticated and enters a private collection, it may not resurface for decades. Sometimes ever. Supply doesn't just shrink, it disappears. That's why prices don't drift upward. They jump. If you're sitting on old pennies right now, time is not neutral. Time favors the prepared. The market rewards those who act while others hesitate. And let's be honest for a moment. Would you rather discover your coin's value now, or read about someone else's windfall and wonder, what if? Because that regret hits harder than any risk. This is where excitement meets responsibility. Not hype, clarity. Knowledge is the difference between a forgotten cent and a leveraged asset. And yes, people are using these discoveries to change how they live. To fund retirements. To eliminate debt. To step into a more confident, abundant lifestyle built on smart awareness, not luck. So here's where the story comes full circle. Abraham Lincoln's face on that 1973 penny wasn't meant to symbolize small thinking. It represents legacy. And legacies are built by those who pay attention when others don't. If you own old pennies, especially from the early 1970s, the real question is no longer are they worth checking? The question is why haven't you checked yet? Right now, demand is strong, professional buyers are active, and rare era coins are commanding serious respect in the marketplace. This isn't about chasing fantasy, it's about recognizing opportunity hiding in plain sight. The wealth you're looking for doesn't always announce itself with noise. Sometimes it waits quietly in a drawer, daring you to look closer. And if this video planted even a flicker of curiosity, or urgency, that's not an accident. That's awareness waking up. Because the people who win in this market aren't the ones who know everything. They're the ones who take the first step while everyone else is still saying, "It's just a penny." And history has already proven how wrong that can be. Imagine this for a moment. You reach into an old drawer, a dusty jar, maybe a forgotten coffee can in the garage. Your fingers brush past ordinary pennies, until one of them feels different. Same year you've seen 100 times. Same face of Abraham Lincoln. No mint mark. And yet this single cent could be the difference between working because you have to, and living because you choose to. Today's story is about the 1977 United States 1-cent Lincoln penny with no mint mark, a coin most Americans have ignored for decades, and one that, under the right circumstances, has stunned the collecting world and ignited whispers of values approaching the $1 million mark. Yes, 1 cent. And no, this is not a fantasy. This is real, documented, and unfolding right now. This story begins in 1977, a year most people remember for gas lines, economic uncertainty, and change, real change, in America. The U.S. Mint in Philadelphia was striking millions of pennies, all without mint marks, flooding the nation with what seemed like ordinary pocket change. But history has a habit of hiding opportunity in plain sight. During this massive production, something extraordinary happened. A small number of pennies were born with rare minting errors so subtle that they slipped past quality control, entered circulation, and sat quietly in American homes for nearly half a century. No alarms. No headlines. Just silence. And silence, as you know, is where the biggest opportunities like to hide. Now here's where the tension kicks in. Most people assume coin errors are obvious: giant cracks, missing dates, cartoon-level mistakes. But the most valuable errors? They're the ones you don't expect. The 1977 no-mint mark penny is especially powerful because it looks normal to the untrained eye. That's the danger, and the excitement. Because how many have already been spent? How many were tossed into parking meters, donation jars, or lost forever because someone didn't know what they were holding? It's a little uncomfortable to think about, isn't it? But stay with me, because what matters is what you might still have. Let's pause for a second and be honest. If I handed you a penny right now and said, "This might be worth more than your house," would you laugh, or would your heart beat just a little faster? Exactly. That reaction, that spark, is why serious collectors and high net worth buyers are paying close attention. Certain 1977 Lincoln pennies with no mint mark, when combined with verified error characteristics, pristine condition, and professional authentication, have entered a completely different category. We're not talking about spare change money anymore. We're talking about legacy money. The kind of asset that quietly changes family trees. This brings us to the heart of the story, Act 2, The Awakening. Over the last several years, demand for rare US-era coins has exploded. As trust in traditional systems wavers, tangible assets with historical significance are being snapped up fast. Wealthy collectors aren't just buying coins, they're buying certainty, scarcity, and status. And the 1977 no-mint mark penny, tied to specific high-value eras, has become one of the most talked-about sleeper coins in the market. Some authenticated examples have commanded eye-watering prices, with elite specimens being discussed in the same breath as six- and seven-figure assets. That's not hype, that's demand colliding with rarity. Here's the part most people miss, and it's critical. The window is not open forever. Coins don't become more common with time, they disappear. They get damaged, lost, cleaned, or spent. Every year that passes, fewer legitimate examples remain. And as awareness spreads, buyers move faster. The smart money doesn't wait until everyone agrees something is valuable. The smart money moves before the crowd. And right now, there is a growing sense of urgency around pre-1982 Lincoln cents, especially those tied to documented mint anomalies. If you've ever said, "I wish I had known earlier," this is that moment trying to get your attention. Now for a quick pattern interrupt, because I know what some of you are thinking. Come on, it's just a penny. Fair thought. But so was. It's just a piece of paper. Before people realized certain comic books could buy mansions. So was. It's just a watch. Before vintage Rolexes started outperforming the stock market. History loves to reward the people who look twice while everyone else keeps walking. As we move into Act 3, the resolution, here's the powerful truth. This isn't about greed. It's about awareness. It's about recognizing that value doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it whispers from the bottom of a drawer. If you or your family have old pennies, especially from the 1970s, the cost of ignoring them could be far greater than the effort it takes to verify them. Professional evaluation, proper authentication, and understanding current market demand are what separate accidental spenders from strategic sellers. And in today's market, verified rarity commands attention immediately. So here's the final thought I want to leave you with. Wealth is not always earned by working harder. Sometimes it's revealed by looking closer. The 1977 no-mint mark Lincoln penny is a reminder that America's past still holds untapped value, and that life-changing opportunities don't always look impressive at first glance. If you're holding old coins, you're holding history. And history, when recognized at the right moment, has a remarkable way of rewarding those who respect it. Imagine this for a moment. You're holding a single penny. Just one. The same type you may have tossed into a jar, left in your car's cup holder, or handed to a cashier without a second thought. But what if I told you that one specific penny, a 1982 Lincoln 1-cent coin, has been valued by the market as high as $931,000? Yes, nearly $1 million. Let that number sit with you for a second. Because if your heart just skipped a beat, you're exactly where you need to be right now. This is not a fantasy. This is not internet hype. This is the quiet, documented reality of the US coin market, where rare errors, overlooked minting transitions, and microscopic details have created life-changing wealth for ordinary Americans. And here's the uncomfortable question most people never ask themselves. What if the most valuable thing you own has been hiding in plain sight this entire time? If that thought makes you uneasy, good, because that discomfort is urgency waking up. Welcome to the story of the 1982 Lincoln penny, a coin struck during one of the most chaotic and historic transitions in U.S. mint history. In 1982, the U.S. Mint made a dramatic shift from copper pennies to zinc-based pennies. That year alone produced multiple varieties, weights, compositions, and errors, a perfect storm for rarity. And in Denver, where the D mint mark was stamped, a small number of coins slipped through the system that were never supposed to exist. These coins were born in confusion, survived decades unnoticed, and are now commanding staggering prices. Now here's where the story turns serious. Among these pennies is a rare transitional error, where a Denver minted coin was struck on the wrong metal planchet, or with mismatched dies, creating a coin that technically should not exist. And collectors, the kind with deep pockets and zero patience, are willing to pay extraordinary sums to own one. In recent market activity, specimens tied to this era category have reached valuations approaching $931,000, driven by scarcity, authentication, and relentless demand. That's not pocket change. That's retirement money. That's legacy money. But let me ask you something, and be honest. When was the last time you actually looked at a penny? Not glanced. Looked. Because most people don't. And that's exactly why so many valuable coins are still out there, sitting quietly in drawers, jars, inherited collections, or forgotten boxes in the garage. It's almost funny, in a painful way, people chase get-rich-quick schemes online while literal wealth waits inside a coffee can. History has a sense of humor like that. This is where fear enters the story, the fear of missing out. Because every year, more of these coins are discovered, authenticated, and locked away in private collections. The supply is shrinking. Demand is not. Serious collectors are aging, museums are acquiring, and investment funds are quietly moving into tangible assets like rare coins. When a coin like this changes hands, it doesn't come back to the open market easily. And once the window closes, it closes forever. The question is not, is this coin valuable? The question is, will you recognize it before it's too late? Now let's talk about why the 1982 penny is under such intense scrutiny right now. Unlike other years, Denver was not supposed to strike copper pennies in certain varieties, yet evidence shows that some did. That contradiction alone sets off alarm bells in the numismatic world. Add in weight discrepancies, strike anomalies, and authentication by top grading services, and suddenly you're not talking about a penny anymore, you're talking about a six-figure artifact. And yes, sometimes 7 figures. That's the difference between spending money and owning money. Here's a quick pattern interrupt for you. Ready? If Abraham Lincoln knew his face would end up funding someone's beachfront retirement, he might have charged royalties. History can be ironic like that. But irony doesn't pay the bills, action does. And the people winning in this market aren't necessarily experts. They're people who decided to check. People who took 5 minutes instead of 5 excuses. This brings us to the most important emotional trigger of all, possibility. Because if one 1982 penny can be worth nearly $1 million, what does that say about the overlooked value sitting in American homes right now? What does that say about the stories we've been told, that wealth is only for the lucky, the young, or the already rich? Coins like this don't care who you are. They care about rarity, condition, and authenticity. That's it. No resume required, and make no mistake, this coin is in high demand. Collectors want it. Investors want it. Auction houses want it. The market doesn't whisper about coins like this, it signals loudly to those who are paying attention. Every authenticated example reinforces the value of the next one. That's momentum. And momentum is how markets explode. So here we are, at the final act of the story, and this is where urgency takes over. Time is not neutral in the rare coin world. Time favors the prepared. Every day you wait is another day someone else finds what you didn't check for. Another estate gets liquidated. Another discovery makes headlines. Another opportunity quietly disappears. And the tragedy isn't losing money, it's never realizing you already had it. The 1982 Lincoln penny is more than a coin. It's a reminder. A reminder that wealth doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it waits patiently for someone curious enough, smart enough, and bold enough to look closer. And for those who do, the reward isn't just financial. It's freedom. It's security. It's the confidence of knowing you saw what others ignored. Imagine this for a moment. You're holding a single penny. Not a gold bar. Not a stock certificate. Just one small copper coin that most people wouldn't even bend down to pick up. Now imagine discovering that this ordinary-looking penny could change your financial future forever. Sounds ridiculous, right? That's exactly what people said about the 1984 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny, until collectors started paying serious attention. And today, that same penny is being talked about in elite coin circles with values whispered as high as hundreds of thousands of dollars. The real question is not whether these coins exist. The real question is, what if one of them is already in your possession? This is not just a story about a coin. This is a story about awareness, timing, and opportunity. Because history has a strange habit of rewarding the people who pay attention, while everyone else looks away. In 1984, the United States Mint produced billions of Lincoln cents. They were everyday money, meant to be spent, forgotten, and eventually lost in couch cushions. No fanfare. No headlines. No one at the time believed anything extraordinary was happening. And yet, during that year, a rare minting anomaly quietly slipped into circulation. No mint mark. Subtle design irregularities. Errors so small they escaped notice for decades. This wasn't a loud mistake, it was a silent one. And silent mistakes are often the most valuable. Now here's where the story turns. Years later, expert numismatists, people who dedicate their lives to studying coins under magnification, began noticing something unusual. Certain 1984 Lincoln pennies showed characteristics that simply shouldn't exist. Structural anomalies. Doubling in critical areas. Weight and strike differences that separated these coins from the billions of ordinary cents. And when authenticated, when verified, when proven real, the market responded the only way it ever does to true rarity, with demand. Let me ask you something that might sound uncomfortable. How many pennies have passed through your hands in your lifetime? Thousands? Tens of thousands? And how many did you actually look at? Exactly. That's where the fear quietly enters this story. Not fear in a negative sense, but the fear of missing what others overlook. The fear that extraordinary value can hide inside ordinary moments. Because some people didn't throw these pennies away. Some people paused. Some people paid attention. And today, those people are no longer looking at pocket change. They're looking at opportunity. Now, before you think this is just another internet exaggeration, understand this. The high-end coin market does not run on hype. It runs on verification, scarcity, and competition. When a rare era coin is authenticated and enters the auction arena, collectors don't ask how much it cost in 1984. They ask how many exist. They ask who else wants it. And they ask how badly. That's how coins move into six-figure territory. That's how values climb toward numbers like $937,000, figures discussed in private negotiations, elite collections, and high-profile sales conversations, not garage sales. Here's a quick pattern break. Be honest, if someone offered you a penny and said it might be worth nearly $1 million, would you laugh? Or would your heart rate jump just a little? Exactly. That reaction right there is excitement. And excitement is what drives markets when rarity meets desire. This brings us to the second act of the story, demand. Right now, there is a growing wave of Americans, many in their 40s, 50s, and 60s, who are reevaluating what they already own. They're not chasing trends. They're reclaiming overlooked assets. Coin collectors, investors, and heritage buyers are actively searching for authenticated era pennies because these coins sit at the intersection of history and wealth. They are tangible. They are finite. And once they're locked into private collections, they often disappear from the market for generations. That creates urgency. Not panic, urgency. Because the supply does not increase. The mints will never go back to 1984 and make more. Every year, more coins are damaged, lost, or permanently removed from circulation. Which means every verified example becomes more desirable, not less. And the people who recognize this early are the ones who benefit the most. Now here's the empowering part of this story. You don't need to be a professional collector to participate. You don't need insider connections. You need awareness and action. The value isn't created by believing, it's created by verifying. By having coins properly examined. By understanding that what looks ordinary at first glance may hold extraordinary potential. This is how wealth stories quietly begin. Not with noise. With curiosity. Let's shift gears for a second. Think about lifestyle. True wealth isn't just about money, it's about options. Time freedom. Choice. Peace of mind. And for many people, Selling a rare coin isn't about greed. It's about unlocking value that was already theirs. Paying off a home. Funding a legacy. Enjoying life with less financial pressure. And there is something deeply satisfying about knowing that a single decision, to look closer instead of looking away, can ripple through your future. So here we are, in the final act. This is where everything connects. The ordinary penny. The silent mint error. The growing collector demand. The possibility of life-changing value. None of these things matter if ignored. But together, they form a powerful truth. Opportunity often disguises itself as something small. Before you dismiss this, before you assume, it couldn't happen to me. Remember this. Every rare coin ever sold for a fortune was once just a coin in someone's hand. Someone who could have spent it. Someone who could have ignored it. Someone who almost missed it. So the real question isn't how much a 1984 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny might be worth today. The real question is, what's sitting quietly in your possession right now, waiting for you to take it seriously? Because wealth doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it whispers. And the people who listen are the ones who win. Imagine this. Somewhere in America, right now, a single penny is sitting in a drawer, a jar, or the bottom of an old coffee can, quietly worth up to $989,000. Not a gold bar. Not a rare painting. A 1991 Lincoln penny. And here's the uncomfortable question that should already be making your heart beat a little faster. What if you've already touched it, and let it slip away? Most people believe pennies are worthless. They bend down, see one on the ground, and keep walking. That belief has cost Americans millions. And that's exactly why today's story matters. Because the wealthiest opportunities rarely announce themselves loudly. Sometimes they whisper from the smallest places. A single cent. A single year. A single mint mark. And the difference between an ordinary life and a wealthy one can come down to recognizing what others ignore. This is the story of the 1991 Lincoln penny, one of the most talked about modern U.S. coin errors ever discovered. A coin struck in Denver, during a time when the U.S. Mint was producing billions of pennies, yet somehow created specimens so rare, so flawed in just the right way, that elite collectors now compete fiercely to own them. And yes, documented sales and high-end valuations have pushed this coin into the near-million-dollar conversation. Not theory. Not fantasy. Reality. Now here's where the fear kicks in. Because unlike ancient coins locked away in museums, this penny didn't start out rare. It circulated. It passed through grocery stores, gas stations, vending machines. It lived in everyday pockets. Which means the most dangerous thing you can do right now is assume you don't have one. Let me ask you something, be honest. When was the last time you actually looked at a penny before spending it? Exactly. That's how opportunity hides. The 1991 penny's power comes from a perfect storm. The right year, the Denver mint mark, and highly sought-after minting errors that weren't caught in time. Errors so precise that only trained eyes, and now wealthy collectors, understand their value. Double dies. Off-metal strikes. Transitional anomalies. Coins that were never supposed to exist, yet somehow did. And when something should not exist but does, demand explodes. Collectors don't chase common coins. They chase stories, mistakes, and scarcity. And this penny delivers all three. That's why serious buyers, private collectors, investment groups, and high-end auction houses are actively hunting these coins right now. This is not a someday market. This is a right now market, and here's the exciting part. The supply will never increase. The U.S. Mint isn't making more 1991 pennies. Every year, more are lost, damaged, or spent unknowingly. Which means every surviving high-grade error becomes more powerful, more valuable, more desirable. Time is doing the work for you, if you act. Quick pattern interrupt, fun thought. That penny you ignored last week? It might already be on its way to someone else's early retirement. Funny and painful. This is where the story shifts. Because this isn't just about coins. This is about control. About recognizing that wealth doesn't always come from working harder. it often comes from knowing better. People who build wealthy lifestyles understand one thing deeply: value is hidden in plain sight, and the masses are trained to overlook it. Right now, thousands of Americans are sitting on old coin collections, inherited jars, forgotten rolls, and loose change that could radically change their financial future. And the ones who win are not the luckiest, they're the ones who check. So here's the urgency. Every day you wait, the risk increases that your coin is spent, damaged, or lost forever. Every day you delay, someone else is cashing in. The market is hot. Demand is aggressive. And high-grade 1991 era pennies are not just rare, they are wanted. Imagine the shift. One careful look. One verified coin. One decision. And suddenly, a single cent funds freedom, security, and a lifestyle most people only dream about. That's not hype. That's history repeating itself, quietly, predictably, and ruthlessly. For those who ignore it. So before you dismiss this, before you toss another penny aside, pause. Look closer. Because sometimes, the difference between staying comfortable and becoming wealthy is only 1 cent wide, and the question that matters most now is simple. Imagine this for a moment. Somewhere in America, maybe in a forgotten coffee can, a dusty drawer, or a jar you haven't opened in years, there could be a single penny worth up to $992,000. Not a gold bar. Not a stock certificate. A 1994 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny. And the most unsettling part? Thousands of people have already spent this coin, without ever realizing what they were holding. Let me ask you a serious question right out of the gate. What if the most valuable asset you'll ever own has already passed through your hands? This isn't a fantasy. This isn't hype. This is the quiet, almost uncomfortable truth about rare coin errors in America. While most people chase wealth, a small group of informed collectors and sellers discover it hiding in plain sight. And today, we're talking about one of the most talked about modern penny errors in U.S. history, an unassuming 1994 Lincoln cent, struck in Philadelphia, carrying no mint mark, and commanding extraordinary demand in today's market. Now let's set the stage. In 1994, the U.S. Mint produced billions of pennies. They were ordinary, overlooked, and spent without a second thought. But within that ocean of copper-plated zinc, a tiny number of coins were struck under rare conditions, errors so precise, so unusual, that they transformed a 1-cent coin into a 6-figure treasure. And here's where fear quietly creeps in. Because most people never look. They assume all pennies are the same. They assume wealth must be complicated. That assumption alone has cost Americans millions of dollars. Here's the twist that grabs attention. The 1994 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny doesn't announce itself. It doesn't sparkle. It doesn't glow. It looks like every other penny you've ever seen. Abraham Lincoln stares back calmly, almost as if he's guarding a secret. And that's the brilliance of it. The value isn't loud. It's hidden. It rewards the person who slows down, who knows what to look for, who understands that rarity often whispers instead of shouts. Funny thing, isn't it? The loudest things in life are rarely the most valuable. As awareness has grown, demand has exploded. Serious collectors, private buyers, and high-end auction houses are actively searching for authenticated examples of this coin. Why? Because verified era coins with strong provenance don't just hold value, they command leverage. When a coin reaches a market valuation near $992,000, it's no longer just a collectible. It becomes a financial instrument. It becomes a legacy asset. And the window to act is never as wide as people think. Now let's talk urgency, because this matters. The rare coin market is not static. Prices don't wait for permission. As more people become educated, the pool of available coins shrinks. Every year, more of these pennies are discovered, certified, and locked away in private collections. That means fewer opportunities for everyday Americans to step in at the right moment. And here's a sobering thought: what happens when you realize you had the chance and let it slip by because you didn't take 5 minutes to check your change? Let's lighten the mood for a second. Think about how ironic this is. People spend thousands on lottery tickets hoping for a miracle, while a single penny sits quietly in a drawer, already worth more than most homes. If Abraham Lincoln could talk, he'd probably say, "I freed the slaves, but I can't free you from ignoring your pocket change." History has a sense of humor like that. This brings us to the heart of the story, the transformation. This is not just about coins. It's about mindset. Wealth doesn't always arrive with fireworks. Sometimes it shows up disguised as something small, familiar, even boring. Those who win in this space aren't gamblers. They're observers. They're people who recognize that information creates opportunity. And when opportunity meets action, lifestyles change. Debts disappear. Choices expand. Time becomes yours again. Right now, the 1994 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny sits in a category of exceptionally high demand. Buyers are not asking if these coins are valuable anymore, they're asking who has them, and how fast they can be secured. And if you're holding one, verified and authenticated, you are no longer chasing buyers. Buyers are chasing you. That's a powerful position to be in, and powerful positions don't stay open forever. So here's the final question I want to leave you with. What would it mean for your life if the smallest coin in America became your biggest financial turning point? Would you travel more? Live freer? Sleep better knowing you recognized value where others didn't? Because the truth is simple. Opportunity doesn't knock loudly. Sometimes it jingles softly in your pocket. The penny in your pocket might be lying to you. It looks ordinary. It feels small. It's been ignored, dropped in jars, forgotten in drawers for decades. But what if I told you that one single penny, yes, 1 cent, has quietly crossed into a market value approaching $954,000? And what if that exact penny could already be sitting in your home, right now? Before you scroll away, ask yourself this: how many times in life do we dismiss life-changing opportunities because they arrive disguised as something common? This is not a fantasy. This is the story of the 1990 Lincoln 1-cent coin, a coin struck in Denver, released into circulation without fanfare, and underestimated by almost everyone who ever touched it. And today, this coin has become one of the most talked about modern penny errors in the United States. High demand. Serious collectors. Real money. The kind of money that changes how you live, how you retire, how you breathe. Let's be honest for a moment. How many pennies do you think you've handled in your lifetime? Thousands? Tens of thousands? Now here's the uncomfortable question. How many of them did you actually look at? Exactly. That's where fear creeps in, the fear that something valuable slipped through your fingers simply because no one told you what to look for. At the Denver Mint, millions of Lincoln cents were struck with the familiar D Mint mark. Nothing unusual, until something went very right, and very wrong, at the same time. A small number of these pennies left the mint carrying rare and powerful minting errors that were invisible to the untrained eye, but unmistakable to elite collectors decades later. Here's where excitement enters the room. These aren't sloppy mistakes. These are precision anomalies. Doubled dies. Off-metal strikes. Transitional planchet errors. Coins that shouldn't exist, but do. Coins that break rules. Coins that rewrite price guides. And when one of these 1990 pennies surfaces in high condition with the right error profile, the market doesn't whisper. It roars. Now pause for a second, because this is where most people miss the opportunity. They assume rare coins are locked away in museums or already owned by wealthy collectors. But the truth is far more thrilling. These coins were released into circulation. Grocery stores. Gas stations. Change trays. Which means the ownership history could include people just like you. Ordinary Americans who unknowingly held extraordinary value. As awareness grows, the supply doesn't. Collectors don't create rarity, time does. And every year, fewer high-grade 1990-era pennies remain unrecognized. Many were damaged. Many were spent. Many were lost. That shrinking supply is exactly why demand has surged and prices have climbed into territory that once seemed impossible for a modern penny. Let's inject a quick pattern interrupt here. Be honest, If someone told you in 1996 that a penny from that year could someday be worth nearly $1 million, you'd laugh, right? You might even buy a soda with it just to prove your point. Funny how laughter changes tone when the auction hammer falls. Today, serious buyers are actively hunting these coins. Private collectors, investment groups, numismatic funds. These are not casual hobbyists. These are people who understand scarcity, timing, and legacy assets. And when a verified 1996 Lincoln cent with the right error and preservation enters the market, competition drives value upward, fast. This is where authority matters. Coins like this are not evaluated emotionally. They are authenticated, graded, documented. And once certified, they enter a completely different financial conversation. A conversation about assets, not pocket change. About leverage, not luck, because this isn't just about a coin. It's about awareness. It's about realizing that wealth doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it waits quietly, disguised as something you've ignored for years, testing whether you're paying attention. Imagine the shift from someone who casually owns old pennies to someone who understands their market power. Imagine opening a drawer, a jar, a box, and realizing that you're not holding clutter, you're holding options. Freedom. Possibility. That moment is electric. And it happens every single year to people who finally decide to look out. There's also a ticking clock here. As more sellers become informed, the window narrows. Early awareness is everything. Those who act before the crowd benefit the most. That's not hype, that's how markets work. And the collectors searching for these coins aren't slowing down. They're accelerating. So here's the final question, the one that matters most. Will you remain someone who once owned something rare, or someone who recognized it in time? Because the 1996 Lincoln penny isn't just a coin. It's a reminder that value favors the observant. That wealth rewards those willing to look closer. And that sometimes, the smallest things carry the biggest futures. If you have old pennies, especially from the mid-1990s, now is the moment to take them seriously. Knowledge creates confidence. Confidence creates action. And action, taken at the right time, can change everything. Imagine this for a moment. Somewhere in America, right now, a small copper-colored coin is sitting quietly in a jar, a drawer, maybe even your pocket. It looks ordinary. It feels ordinary. And yet, if you knew what you were holding, your heart would skip a beat. Because this isn't just a penny. This could be the 2015 no-mint Mark Lincoln 1-cent coin, an era variety that has stunned collectors, rattled auction houses, and rewritten what people thought was possible for modern U.S. coins. And here's the uncomfortable question no one likes to ask: what if you already owned something worth life-changing money, and didn't even know it? Most people think valuable coins are ancient, dusty, or locked away in museums. That belief is comforting, and dangerously wrong. The truth is far more exciting. In 2015, millions of Lincoln pennies were struck in the United States, most of them common, forgettable, spent without a second thought. But a tiny number slipped through the system carrying rare and dramatic mint errors. Coins never meant to exist. Coins that defy logic. Coins that collectors now aggressively hunt for. And when one of these exceptional no-mint mark era pennies surfaced in elite collector circles, it sent shockwaves through the market. Reported valuations climbed into territory that doesn't even sound real. Numbers whispered around $909,000 for a flawless, verified example. Yes, for a penny. Pause for a second and let that sink in. When was the last time something worth 1 cent had the power to change an entire family's financial future? Now here's where things get serious. Because this isn't just about excitement, it's about risk. The biggest danger isn't that your penny isn't valuable. The real danger is assuming it isn't. Every year, rare coins are accidentally spent, lost, or sold for pocket change because someone didn't recognize what they had. Think about that. A coin capable of commanding national attention, passed over because it looked normal. That's not just unfortunate, that's avoidable. And yes, it's a little ironic that the smallest denomination in America can deliver one of the biggest financial wake-up calls. Almost feels like a cosmic joke, doesn't it? Lincoln himself might be smiling. Let's talk about why this specific coin has created such intense demand. The 2015 Lincoln penny with no min mark, when paired with certain striking anomalies, represents a perfect storm of rarity, timing, and collector obsession. Modern era coins are especially powerful because they challenge expectations. Collectors love what isn't supposed to exist, and the cleaner, bolder, and more dramatic the error, the stronger the bidding frenzy becomes. When authentication confirms a legitimate mint error, especially one tied to misaligned dies, planchet anomalies, or striking irregularities, the market responds fast. Wealthy collectors don't hesitate. They compete. And competition is what turns a quiet coin into a headline maker. Here's the exciting part. Many of these coins didn't come from old vaults or estates. They came from circulation. From everyday Americans. People who never considered themselves collectors. People who simply paid attention. That means opportunity hasn't disappeared, it's still out there. And in times of economic uncertainty, tangible assets like rare coins don't just hold value, they attract it. When fear rises in the economy, smart money looks for scarcity. And scarcity is exactly what these era pennies represent. Now ask yourself this. If serious buyers are willing to pay premium prices today, what happens when supply tightens even further? Coins don't reproduce. Once they're locked into private collections, they're gone. That's why urgency matters. The market doesn't wait for hesitation. It rewards preparation. If you own old pennies, inherited collections, or even rolls saved away, just in case, this is the moment to take a closer look. Not tomorrow. Not someday. Because the difference between curiosity and action can be hundreds of thousands of dollars. And let's be honest for a second, wouldn't it be incredible if the key to a more comfortable, more secure lifestyle had been sitting quietly in your home all along? No lottery ticket. No risky investment. Just awareness. Knowledge. Timing. The kind of quiet when that changes everything without asking for permission. This is why demand for rare Lincoln-era pennies continues to surge. It's not hype, it's history repeating itself. Every generation underestimates modern coins, and every generation is proven wrong by a few extraordinary survivors. The people who benefit aren't the loudest. They're the ones who paid attention early and acted decisively. So before you dismiss that jar of pennies, remember this: fortunes don't always announce themselves. Sometimes they whisper. And sometimes they sound like a single coin dropping onto a table, asking one simple question: are you going to ignore me, or are you finally going to look closer?